Hi guys, Jake here from Printability, and today we're going to be talking about a car. But this isn't any kind of car, this is a car with balls for wheels. So, just picture a car with big balls. Um, you know, don't picture that. That is not what we want to be picturing. But yeah, it's a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Well, I say a long time, probably about two and a half months. But I've been waiting for parts. I've been moving into my new flat. I mean, I haven't uploaded a video in YouTube in about just over a year. So it feels kind of weird talking to a camera again. I keep messing up. This is like my 12th attempt. I've even changed cameras, and this one's a bit, but you know, I'm gonna work with it. I'm slapping my keyboard. Um, anyway, it's nice to see you guys again. If you guys are still watching, if you're new to the channel, I hope you enjoy what I upload. I'm going to try and upload once every week, once every other week. It depends on kind of how much work I'm doing, if I get time, but I'm going to try and do a video a week, even if they're just small videos, like really quick ones, just updates about stuff, or if I'm live streaming, I'll do a quick couple of clips from that, because I play Minecraft, I play Fortnite, do a bit of Call of Duty. Anything that really comes my way, I always give it an attempt, and we're going to give it that a try. But yeah, back to this whole car idea. I am going to be designing a car with balls instead of wheels, which means there's a lot of things we need to talk about in it. And today, this video is going to be working on the drive shaft, or the axles for it, which I'm going to upload a video, a little short animation I made. It's not a very good one. And then we're going to dissect that animation, and we're going to talk about roughly what's going to work where, how it's going to work, and we're going to take it from there. And then I'm going to show you a couple of 3D printed parts. We're going to try and work it out. I've got a green screen coming tomorrow, so that means we'll be able to do a lot more with this. We'll be able to kind of picture how big it's going to be, roughly what it's going to feel like. But for now, we're just going to be talking about the axles. So here's the animation. Well, let's do this. Okay, so now that you've had a look at that, that was a little bit too quick, so I'm going to describe it step by step. I've got the screen in front of me here, and I'm going to have a little pop-up here of the actual animation, and we're going to go through step by step of kind of how it works. So first we've got these 5 lines. You've got the one at the top, and what that allows is, that is parallel to the ground, and then it's got 45 degrees going twice along it, so this changes it from parallel to perpendicular to the ground. I'll explain why I had to do 45 degrees in a second, when the rest of the animation is continued. And these green blocks here are going to be gearboxes, which change it by 90 degrees to make it parallel back to the ground again. And the reason why I had to do these in gearboxes was because I needed a straight 90-degree change in a very small area. But also because these gearboxes are going to need to be rotated 360 degrees around the pivot of the axle, as well as being turned by the axle, but the actual 360-degree rotation will not be controlled by the axle, will be controlled by an external source. Now that's going to become a lot more important and a lot more reasonable in the next video when I describe how this is going to be powering the ball. So after this 90-degree rotation, I showed the yellow block here, which is the engine or the motor, depending on which aspect. If we're talking about the remote control version, it'll just be a small DC motor. Whereas if we're talking about the go-kart version, that's going to be more of like a motorbike engine or somewhere along those lines, a very small engine just to power it. Then we've got that being perpendicular to the axle again, which means we have to have a 90-degree rotation of angle. However, this is where I messed up, because you can see here that I drew the angle of the gearbox, of the engine, to be going clockwise, and then I also drew the angle of rotation on the axle to be clockwise, where, if you know with gears, if you've got 2 gears and they're changing the direction, it is going to change it, it's going to reverse it, which means that the axle should actually be going anti-clockwise. Now what I'm going to do here instead is I'm going to be converting that, so I'm just going to pretend that the motor was going anti-clockwise so that the axle is going the right direction, so I'm sorry about that. Then once we go along a few more steps, these blue arrows show where the universal joints are going to go between the 2 lines, which is what I was talking about earlier. So the reason why I needed to be 45 degrees is because you can't change on a universal joint. You can't allow it to be more than, I think, 60 degrees. It starts to act up. It depends on which ones you get. You can get some that do a full 90 degrees, but they are way above my price range, and I don't even know if they'd work for this. So I did 45 degrees and 2, which means that you get the full 90 degrees. And they're shown by the little red dots. Now if I continue, you can see that the rotation, the angle stays going clockwise through the entire thing. Now this is when things start to get a little bit dicey. So I've drawn this correctly on the gearbox, so the change of angle again is inverted, so it's now technically going in the same direction, anti-clockwise, as the engine itself. However, if you look at it, you can tell that these are both going two different directions, and I realised that after drawing, because if you look at it from left to right instead of middle and then sideways, you can tell it's not going 90 degrees, it's going a full 180 degrees in either direction, which then inverts it. So my solution to this was to turn one of the gearboxes sideways, or I guess horizontally, 180 degrees in the opposite direction, which means that now they are both going 360 degrees away from each other, or 0, which means it counteracts itself. And this allows them both to be turning in the same direction from one motor. So now we're going to try and do like a small 3D model. I've got some bearings, not some bearings, I have the gears here, which I'm going to be making a gearbox out of. I'm using radial gears from a remote control car just because it's a lot easier to get my hands on and they just work a lot easier. I also have some remote control car universal joints. I have a lot more of these somewhere, but this is the first bag I picked up. So I'm going to be using those and 3D printing some small poles just to work in between them, and we're going to build a rough rig on a book and I will get back with that one. So here we have a rough assembly of the parts that I made. So this is for the axle, and I used a black one in the middle just so that you can kind of show where the middle is whilst I'm assembling it, because it does get a bit confusing and where all the parts go is just, I thought this might clear it up if I put a black one in the middle to show where the main axle is, and then you can kind of see the rotation from there. I did realise halfway through making this that I hadn't undone half of the lug nuts in the universal joints, which means that I just needed to undo a few of them, so it took a little bit longer than I was expecting, but it was nothing too crazy. I mean, there's only 4 universal joints, which means there was a maximum of 8 lug nuts to undo, because there's 2 on each side. Also, unfortunately, just before I recorded this clip, I'd already tested all of these, and I did actually have 2 more pins that I'd made, just unfortunately they snapped whilst I was taking them out, which just meant that I had to reprint them and kind of force them in a little bit better because they needed a bit of sanding off the edge. But no, that's the rough shape of the universal joint axle part, and now we're going to work on the gearbox. And unfortunately, again, you can't really see what's going on in the gearbox, and I will mention that slightly in a minute, and I'll do a bit more of an explanation of how that works, but all of these bits don't actually get glued in, at least not until right at the end. I've made them all loose fitting, so it means I can make any adjustments and not have to worry about buying more gears or anything along those lines. So I'm going to let you guys enjoy the rest of this little video, and I will get back to you once I've finished assembling it. So if you can't tell by the time lapse, I am wearing different clothes. It is another day. In fact, it's now the evening of the next day because I had to do some 3D printing. But I also realised when I was doing that video that you can actually see what's in the inside of this gearbox. So as you could tell by the actual animation, which I'll pop up here just so you can compare the two, this here is the little radial gear, and it's held in with a little plastic bit here, which I'll probably show you guys in the next video if that's what you want to see. It's got 4 little pins that go into the 4 holes of the radial gear, like on this one. You can see the little 4 holes. I was hiding that to the light instead of the camera. And I just made it so it's flush with that edge, that insert, and yeah, and then this bit actually in the back is just a plug that goes onto the 6mm pole, and then it converts it to a 5mm pole which goes into the back of the radial gear, and then comes all the way through the front, like that, and then you can see it there. And this actually isn't fully attached, but this is for what connects to this, which I'll be doing in the next video. I'm still waiting for a lot of parts for that. They're coming towards the end of January, but I should do a little update before then anyway. But you can tell that there's a difference in speed, because you can see here by the speed of this, it's a lot faster compared to my hand movement. and that's just because it's a radial gear, so the gear ratio is way up, so this gets a lot faster. Means if I turn this full rotations, it barely rotates on the back. Unfortunately, you can barely see it. See it a little bit, you can see it enough. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next upload I do, I don't know if that'll be next week, week after that, I'll be explaining what this is going to do in the, whilst it's connected to the next part, which I would also be talking about in that video. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next video.